most people out there have not yet even recovered or caught their breath from that huge burst of inflation.
Right.
And we're still seeing prices rise. We haven't seen prices come down, that's for sure.
Welcome to The Debrief, where we talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the headlines they're covering this week and where the story's going next. I'm Jim Antle. I'm joined today by policy editor Joe Lawler. And Joe, people have been sorting through all the economic data. We get all these headlines each week when a different gauge or barometer is updated. Now, some of that is on pause with the government shutdown, but there seems to be a lot of ambiguity about how well the economy is doing. And you know, when President Biden was in office, they were trying to say everything was great based on various metrics. Now President Trump and his team find himself in the similar situation. Inflation seems to still be an issue. What's the real story here?
Yeah, I think it's a little difficult to keep in mind two things at the same time. So one is that job growth has slowed, but the other is that unemployment is low. So at 4.3%, the unemployment rate is definitely low by historical standards. That's nothing like what you would see in a recession, right? After the financial crisis, we saw it get up closer to 10%, and we're obviously nowhere near that. Joblessness is still low. What we've seen is a slowdown in job growth that has been driven in large part by the crackdown on immigration. So there are fewer people coming across the border, and that means that there are fewer people who are taking jobs and who need jobs. So we're in this, I guess what one way to put it would be the way that the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, put it, which is we're in a low hire, low fire situation. There may not be as many people getting jobs, there may not be as much hiring going on, but we're not seeing mass layoffs. We're not seeing that kind of stress on the labor market. So overall, you'd have to say that labor market churn has slowed, but joblessness is still low.
So there's an argument that this is what Trump promised on the campaign trail, right? Is that there would be an immigration crackdown, number one, and number two, that jobs are to go to Americans first, right?
That's right. And yeah, he could say that he's fulfilled that promise, that he was going to focus on jobs for U.S. workers, for workers who are here in the U.S. now. Now, there's a few additional points you could make. One is businesses could certainly say is the job market maybe a little bit tighter than we would like. Can we find the people that we need? That's one thing to consider. The other is the outlook for younger workers in particular. People who are just graduating from college or even high school who might be entering the labor market. Are there jobs available for them? And that's where the question, I guess, is a little bit more murky, a little bit harder to tell. And the one threat, of course, that's looming over that segment of the job market is what is the impact of these rapid advancements in artificial intelligence technology? Are those taking away entry-level jobs? And I think that's kind of where the debate is right now. That's where the officials of the Fed and the Treasury and economists are trying to sort through the data right now.
And of course, there's still the issue of inflation, which has gone down, but even when inflation goes down, prices don't go down back to where they were before the big burst of inflation. And it's still at a level, depending on which gauge you use and which month you're talking about, that makes the Fed uncomfortable.
Of course, yes. So the Fed wants to see inflation at a 2% annual rate, and we're not there. It's closer to 3% right now. But the problem is that we just had years of high inflation where we've seen the overall level of prices, overall price level for goods and services up more than 20% just in the past 4 years. That's a lot, especially for groceries and things that people buy on a regular basis. Most people out there have not yet even recovered or caught their breath from that huge burst of inflation. And we're still seeing prices rise. We haven't seen prices come down, that's for sure. So this is clearly reflected in the terrible numbers for consumer satisfaction, for consumer confidence. If you poll people about how they're feeling about the economy, they see it as worse than during the financial crisis, right? They think to most households right now, the economy is in worse shape than it was during the immediate aftermath of the pandemic or the Great Recession. And that's because while they might still have their jobs, fewer people are unemployed. So many people are struggling to afford food, their auto payments, their housing. Of course, housing prices are way up. Mortgage rates are up as well. So people are having trouble affording houses. So yeah, that's probably the number one threat facing the Trump administration right now.
And we talked about when inflation was at its recent peak, it was at a 41-year high. But when you think of that number, inflation hadn't really been an issue in over 4 decades. So there are a lot of people living and working who don't have any past experience dealing with inflation.
That's right. So we had the Great Moderation, it's often called, where the Greenspan years, really 3 decades where most people didn't have to think about inflation at all. And suddenly that was something that you had to factor into all kinds of decisions, and costs for groceries, gas, clothes, so many other things, so many other necessities were way up, and people got pinched for sure. And yeah, as you say, for anyone under the age of 50, that had never been something they had to think about before. So that was not only painful, but kind of like a new kind of pain for them.
And then, of course, the new innovation of the Trump years is tariffs. And there's been the ongoing debate of how much can any of this be blamed on tariffs?
Yeah, and so that question is important for so many reasons, right? One is politically, is Trump, if people are paying more for clothes, a lot of clothes are imported from abroad, for appliances, which many are made in different countries and imported here, how much of a pain tolerance is there for higher prices on those goods? Because the Trump agenda, again, is to bring jobs and manufacturing back to America. Maybe people are willing to tolerate some higher prices for a short period of time if that goal is clearly expressed. Maybe not. Maybe they just want cheaper goods.
Right.
And the other factor to consider is distinguishing what might be inflation driven by tariffs and what might be inflation driven by an economy that's running too hot. And that's, of course, what the Fed is wrestling with right now. If the tariffs are driving inflation, that weighs in favor of not lowering rates faster. If they're not going to raise inflation, then the Fed should ease money and should get the economy going the way that Trump has called on them to. So that's one of the major pieces of the puzzle that the officials of the Fed and elsewhere are going to sort through right now.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
You can read Joe and the rest of our policy team's coverage at washingtonexaminer.com.